For the people that clicked on this video, the question of whether or not video games can be art is a settled issue. They are art, and have been for the past 2 decades at least. Confusingly, this debate still rages on outside the gaming community. Thankfully, there are video games released every year that grow in their sophistication, not just in terms of their graphical fidelity and mechanics, but their story. Inevitably, a game will come out that blends narrative complexity and interactivity into perfect harmony. Not for us who already see video games as art forms, but for our supposed cultural and academic elite. We might not be there yet, but we're close. And as of this moment, I believe the game that has come closest to that aforementioned harmony is NieR Automata. While video games have had profound narratives in the past, I don't believe I or the medium itself have seen such a masterful blend of philosophy, psychology, and emotion until NieR Automata. Ever since I did a video on my channel called The Most Profound Moment in Gaming History, I've had people recommending other games that should hold that title, and thank God for that. Perversely, if it weren't for comment section contrarians, I would have never witnessed the profundity of games like Soma, Silent Hill 2, or in this case, NieR Automata. While I'm not ready to say that any singular moment from NieR can be classified as the most profound, I am ready to say that it might be the most profound game I have ever come across. It's at least among the ranks of games like Deus Ex and Metal Gear Solid 2. NieR Automata invokes uncomfortably powerful questions and themes, many of which have been tackled in previous games, but not to such an extent. Though games like Spec Ops: The Line have already addressed the motives of murderous atrocity, or Soma, which has already presented a horrific vision of uncontrolled AI, or BioShock with its utopian tragedy, NieR Automata blends all those issues and more into a masterfully crafted story. Unfortunately for me, but maybe fortunately for you, I cannot coalesce everything about NieR Automata's story into one 15-minute video. What I will have to do in the future is make separate videos about the game's central characters in order to do the overall story justice. For now, I will focus on NieR Automata's central existential problem, a problem that has plagued the globe's most intelligent minds for centuries. Before I state the problem outright, it's necessary to give a brief introduction. Otherwise, the gravity of this problem might not be fully appreciated. Allow me to begin by citing the game's first lines of dialogue.
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Is this a curse? Or some kind of punishment? I often think about the God who blessed us with this cryptic puzzle, and wonder if we'll ever have the chance to kill him.
The idea of killing God references a classic philosophical statement made by Friedrich Nietzsche, arguably the most famous of German philosophers, if not all philosophers. The statement was as follows: God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. I'll do my best to simplify what this statement means. For thousands of years, human societies cemented their moral foundations in religion. The biggest religions were built around creating a closer relationship with something bigger than themselves, namely a god. These gods would represent a society's highest moral values, and they would do their best to emulate. In the 19th century, Nietzsche realized that one of our highest values, truth, was undermining the religious systems we had constructed up until then. One example of this would be how the theory of evolution challenged creationist myths. The inevitable consequence of us questioning one aspect of a religion was to question everything else about it. After all, if one thing might be wrong, what else might be wrong? The undermining of religion by science led to the inevitable question about whether or not God exists. To Nietzsche, the concepts of God, transcendence, and absolute moral truths were no longer tenable. The only thing that could be done is to confront reality in an honest way. The result of this honest confrontation was, to use Solid Snake's words, that there's no such thing in the world as absolute reality, but only human formulations of reality. Even if there was an absolute reality or morality, like a god or a moral system worshipped like a god, it's forever hidden from us, at least in Nietzsche's view. Thus it was assumed that God was quote-unquote dead. The problem with this view is that if there is no God, then the moral foundations that sustained human culture and kept us civil disappeared from beneath us, leaving us to build ourselves back up again from the void we fell into. Some atheists mistake Nietzsche's proclamation of God's death as triumphant, like it was a good thing. Given Nietzsche's fierce criticism of religion, it's understandable why some believe this, but nonetheless, he foresaw the problems that would inevitably come as the result of God's death. This leads us finally to NieR Automata's central existential problem. How do we build up a new moral system if God is dead? More importantly, how do we create a system that gives meaning to life's unbearable suffering? In Nietzsche's mind, the way to do this was to create our own meaning in the absence of God. Now, whether or not human beings can do this is a lengthy, complicated debate that would prevent us from getting around to talking about the game, so we will save that for another time. What we can discuss are the game's perceptions regarding this debate. It seems that the game's lead scenario writer, Yoko Taro, believes that even if human beings can create their own meaning, then we certainly suck at it. Not only is this the case for humans, but for androids, aliens, and machines in the world of NieR Automata. What's worse is, in the case of NieR Automata, conscious beings have been trying to build societies around moral systems that they created in the form of cults and monarchies for 10,000 years, and we still end up perpetuating the murderous cycle of religious conflict. Let us now list some of the gods and meanings that NieR Automata's characters have created. After that, we will determine how successful their creations were in staving off existential angst and the unbearable cruelty that life so often visits upon us. As with Christian religion, we will start with the characters of Adam and Eve. As humanoid machines, the meaning they strived for was to learn more about humanity and surpass their complexity. They were so perplexed by the fact that human beings had the capability of loving and killing in equal measure, a concept so foreign to machines that were built to be rational. The character of Simone sought meaning in beauty. Specifically, she sought validation from others through beauty. If she could get the machine known as John Paul to look in her direction and see her as beautiful, then all of her painful efforts would have been justified. The characters of Emmanuel, the Forest King, and Kierkegaard were responsible for creating traditional religions. The Forest King was so benevolent and kind that it seemed logical to submit to his will and worship him, especially after he died. Kierkegaard promised that his followers would become as gods upon death, a promise so reassuring that a cult would inevitably manifest around him. This continues for all other characters in the game. Pascal's ultimate meaning was the pursuit of knowledge and peaceful coexistence. The Red Girl's ultimate meaning was to further their evolution so they may surpass their alien forerunners. Repeat ad infinitum for all other characters in the game. Now granted, while these systems of meaning could sustain some of these characters for a time, and in some cases for hundreds of years, they inevitably deteriorate when met with the harsh realities of life. When Adam dies, Eve becomes so distraught that he seeks revenge against existence itself by declaring that everything must die. When Simone realized that her efforts to get John Paul's attention were in vain, the meaninglessness of her actions made her go insane. When Pascal realized that the children under his care committed suicide, it made him feel that his efforts towards peaceful coexistence were pipe dreams. The only way he could go on living in this cruel world would be to have his memories deleted. Otherwise, death was, in his mind, the only option. Every time a character's god, system of meaning, or reason for living is obliterated in this game, it leads to either murderous rage, suicide, or some other desperate measure. Life's supposedly meaningless suffering has become so unbearable that only some form of revenge against existence will suffice. This is why at the beginning of the game, the character of 2B fantasizes about whether or not she might have the chance to kill God. To kill God would be revenge against existence. Again, maybe it is possible for us to be able to create a system of values that allows us to bear our existential burden without throwing away the importance of truth. But as we witness in this game, and so many times throughout our history, those systems tend to die off quickly under life's preconditions and our inherent imperfections. The impossibility of this problem tears away at those who become conscious of it. For the strong amongst us, dealing with it forces us into a state of deep introversion. For the weaker amongst us, the problem becomes lethal. Nietzsche realized this, and even proclaimed that his approach to morality wasn't for everybody. Some even argued that Nietzsche's system of morality wasn't even for Nietzsche. This argument is even joked about by Pascal later on in the game.
I see. It seems this Nietzsche was quite the profound thinker. Or perhaps he skipped right past profound and went straight to crazy instead. Oh well.
This is not a pithy condemnation of Nietzsche's formulation of morality post-God. Rather, it's simply pointing out, once again, that creating a sustainable system of values is really difficult. It's so difficult that it might drive people insane, as NieR Automata so effectively demonstrates. But this leaves us with an uncomfortable question. If most human beings lack the ability to create sustainable moral systems for themselves, what does one do in response to life's tragedy? Are we doomed? Well, the debate still rages on in the real world. Some turn back to old religious systems, others might see meaning in advancing science. Unfortunately, that debate is too complicated for us to address now. However, I understand that some of you might be experiencing some existential angst currently, and might require an easing of their psychic tension. Allow me to provide NieR Automata's answer to this conundrum. The game has 26 endings. 5 of those endings are primary ones, A through E, while endings F through Z are more or less false endings. Upon reaching the end of the game, one can choose between endings C and D. Once endings C and D have both been completed, ending E is unlocked. The pods, which accompanied our android protagonists through the game, realize that the data for our now deceased protagonists, 2B, 9S, and A2, are still intact. If we choose to save the data, the player must survive by destroying all the names in the credits at the end of the game. Despite our efforts, we realize the impossibility of being able to survive until the end of the credits, and the game taunts us for this. Give up here. Do you accept defeat? Is it all pointless? Do you admit that there is no meaning to this world? It is only in choosing to continue, despite the impossibility of our success, that the game rewards us. The strength of character it takes to struggle against impossible odds, to bravely look inevitable defeat square in the eye, and defy it anyways, that is the meaning that NieR Automata suggests we strive for. There is something in this defiance that is so powerful, that is so transcendent, that it commands respect from all peoples, from all cultures around the world. Our instinct is to reward this defiance however we may, because that strength of character is so rare. The people who possess it are the ones we revere, that we reward, that we quote-unquote worship. Even if that person dies, their spirit may live on if we follow their example. NieR Automata emulates this truism with ending E. The game rewards those who persist through ending E by bringing in the data of other players to fight alongside you, and the only way these players could join you is if they sacrificed their save data, so they may come to you in your time of need and sustain you through impossible odds. It is in this moment that we put aside our ideological differences and cling to that one thread that binds us all. Life may be filled with suffering, but we can survive it. We can evolve and become greater beings when we embrace that powerful quality that pushes us towards the greatest of sacrifices, whether it's save data in a game or our lives in reality. That quality has sustained us through our primordial and religious past into our present, and as saccharine as it may seem, that quality is love.
Do you still wish to rescue someone, a total stranger, in spite of this?